Hey guys, I'm Little Artiman and welcome to my channel. And thank you so much for clicking on another video. How are you doing? I hope you're doing great, and today we have another video about planning and preparing for a story. We've talked about how to create fantasy worlds and fantasy species too, so today I thought it would be fun to talk about creating and organizing characters. But just one thing before we get started. The first two chapters of the Good Omens fanfic, The Serpent's Coronations, are already on AO3, with a drawing each. You can check the links on the community tab here on the channel, and I'll also link the first chapter down below. And I've been posting the chapters early on Patreon with 2 extra drawings each. So if you're interested, you can check all the links in the description to go read it and say hi in the comments. Now that I said everything I needed, we can get started, and as usual, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Let's get started then. And as I ramble about the creation of the characters, I'll be making a character sheet that I'll leave available for you to download. I'll post it on Patreon, but it will be for free. I just didn't know where else to post it where you'd be able to download it with good quality. You can use it for your characters, and feel free to tell me if you do. Starting the video now, the first step of creating your character is their universe. If you've watched the video about world building, you might remember me talking about creating your characters, but that was after fleshing out a big part of the world. To be completely honest, sometimes you have an idea for a character before creating the world, and that's okay and normal. But all the characters come with a world attached. That world can be the real world or any other, but it is something important to think about. And after that brainstorming part, after getting the ideas for your world and story, it's time to think about the characters themselves. Usually the character ideas come with the world building process, but sometimes it only brings some general plot lines without specific characters. For example, on my mythology story, I know that the main group of fairies existed, and I know they would be running away from an attack to the place they lived. But in the beginning there were 6 fairies, including a baby and an old lady. The lore of that world has changed a lot, but now, as you may know, there are only 4 fairies. The purpose of them in the story is the same. As a group they contribute in a very similar way to the plot, but the characters are completely different. So if you already have a plot, it's a matter of experimentation until you get the characters that work best in that scenario. What I will say is that sometimes less is more. What I mean by that is, don't add characters just because you want another character. It's good when the characters fit well with each other and no one feels like an afterthought. I don't know if that makes sense, but what I'm trying to say is that if you have a group that works well together and doesn't seem to be lacking any important part, then it's better to keep it that way. In some previous stories I would always try to include a lot of random characters just because I had an idea for a cool design or I wanted to add a random completely unnecessary side plot. I don't mean to say that you can't have a lot of characters, you can have as many as you'd like. Just make sure you're adding characters because the story will benefit from them. For example, the Owl House has a big group of important characters by the end and they work perfectly well with each other. As you can see, big groups aren't bad. They're a little harder to work with but can also be a lot of fun. If you created your world and have no idea what story you want to write, I suggest you think about the problems or ambitions you would have in that world. Is there any injustices going on that could lead to a revolution? Or maybe there's a lack of supply so someone has to go find more. Or maybe it's a mysterious world and was accidentally stumbled upon. Or it could be as simple as, it's an okay world, not perfect but not too bad, and the story is just simple and feels very relatable. Anything can work, it just depends on what you like to write about. And your choice doesn't have to be set in stone, you can write some drafts and end up changing your mind. Don't think of it as throwing your hard work away, because even if you're working on something that didn't make it to the final story, you still developed ideas and fleshed out the universe of the story with every step. Just have fun, try some things, and then when you have a general vibe for the plot, you can start working on the characters. Now that you have an idea for your characters, it's important to have some basic informations. This is crucial to any character draft. You can change them later or completely replace the character, but this is the main things that describe your character. And for the start they should have a basic identification, a physical appearance and a short description of their personality or way of acting. I would say these are the informations you get on the first 2 or 3 minutes you know someone, just basic stuff and first impressions only. But let's talk a little bit about these 3 things. A basic identification would be a name and pronouns, I would say. That's enough for you to address your character. If you have a hard time picking names, join the club, it's one of the hardest parts for me. There was a phase in my life where I had 5 different characters all named Alice because I couldn't think of any other name. But I would recommend going to a random name generator or researching baby names and their meanings, for example. And you don't need to give it much thought. You can pick something because it sounds cool. The physical appearance can be transferred to paper in a lot of different ways. If you're an artist, you can always sketch your character, but if you don't want to do that, you can use 2 different options. You can use an image still, but instead of a drawing, use a character creating program. And there are a lot of options. You can use Speakru, for example, or if you have space in your computer, you can use Sims 4. The base game is free and that's all you need for the first draft. There are also apps that you can get on your phone that allow you to create characters. There's plenty of options. Just keep in mind that these are just for you to know what your character looks like. A lot of time this can't be used commercially, but on this stage you don't need to worry about that. The image is just a placeholder for the real thing, but for the first stages it's good. If you don't want to do images, you can always write a brief description or make some key points like the skin, eye and hair color, hair type, height and other categories like that. And you can always just write a short text. You don't need to be super specific, just something brief and straightforward. And when it comes to personality, it's similar to the last part. You can either write a short text or you can use some sort of scale to represent who they are. Are they more introverted or extroverted? Do they use their brain or heart more? Stuff like that. I'll include these things in the character sheet, by the way. A friend of mine did something like this a few days ago, that's what motivated me to do this one. I wanted to have my OCs organized. But with this you have the basic character ideas done. After you experiment with different characters and found a group that works for you, it's time to move to the next step, and it is developing their backstory and filling in the details. This will probably happen while you are writing the story or the draft with the timeline and general ideas. I suggest the backstory part to be written out. It doesn't have to be a long text, but I personally think it's easier to write that part. And together with the backstory, you should also think about their motivations and refine what you wrote about their personality. Don't be afraid to go back and change things. I really like to write the backstory of my OCs, it's so interesting to think about what they've gone through to become who they are. And I think it's also important to mention their relationship with other characters, but I usually include that in the backstory because they may eventually change. When it comes to the details, there are things like their birthday, favorite song or color, what food they like, favorite season, sexuality, if they're a morning person or not, stuff that makes them feel more real. I added some of those in the character sheet, but if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. I love to add these small details in the characters. And of course, in this stage, getting your character design just right is also important, depending on the format your story will have. If your story doesn't involve visuals, then you can just keep the first sketches as a reference for your writing. But if images are part of the storytelling, I'd recommend doing expression sheets and full body drawings. Or if you're not an artist, you can always commission someone to make the drawings. I've read a few comics where one person writes a story and another person draws. And with that, you have your characters finished. So the creation part is done. The only thing left to do is organize them. It can be hard to keep track of all your characters if you have different stories, so it can be helpful to have at least basic information all in the same place, separated by story and group of characters. You can do this any way you like. You can print character sheets and put them in a folder, you can write everything in a notebook, you can do it in a folder on your computer and name the files with the name of the story and character. You can even do an Excel sheet if that suits your liking. What I'll try to do is slowly upload some of my OCs to Unveil. It's a platform where you can share your characters and see other people's characters too. Having your characters organized can be really helpful, and trust me, this is coming for a not very organized person. I sometimes forget characters, so I've been trying to get them all registered and organized, because if I have at least the basic info, I know I won't forget them. And when the time comes to work on their story, I'll have everything that I need. So I hope this helps you out too. Thank you so much for watching this video until the end. I truly appreciate you for taking a little bit of time to listen to my rambles and hopefully find them helpful. The character sheet is in the description if you'd like to use it, and leave in the comments what small detail you'd like to add to your characters. If you like this video, don't forget to leave your like down below and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. But that's it for today, thank you again for watching, I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!